Hello, friends. Tattooed Biker here with you, and welcome back to Freakish Fridays. Who doesn't love a good ghost story? Well, I personally love a good ghost story, especially true paranormal experiences from viewers. And as luck would have it, I have 4 great ones to read tonight. So get ready, kick back, and let's ride into the unexplained. Number 1. Dear TB, I have a story that I think you might like. Here goes. When I was 6 months old, my family moved to Malmstrom Air Force Base in Great Falls, Montana. My dad was in the Air Force at the time, and his job was security police, which means he guarded the missile fields. It usually meant that he spent multiple days at a time in the field. The way housing works in the military is one family out, the next family in. The departing family is responsible for top-to-bottom cleaning of the house. A lot of times, the incoming family can go and take a look at the house to see if they want to accept it. Within a few days of arriving there, we were offered a house. My mother, who was a stay-at-home mom, went to look at the house. She met Debbie, who was the current resident. The house wasn't even close to being ready to pass final inspection, so my mom helped her clean it so it would pass. After they had finished cleaning, my mom and Debbie were saying their goodbyes and all that when Debbie abruptly says to my mom, "You're going to hear a lot of stuff, so here's what happened. I killed my husband." Debbie's husband, Al, was having an affair. Al was telling his girlfriend that he and Debbie were divorcing and he wasn't telling Debbie anything. Well, somehow they got together and confronted Al out their house. They made him choose, and he chose the girlfriend. Al and the girlfriend then proceeded to leave. Debbie, overcome with emotion, grabs a knife, goes up to Al and spikes him once in the shoulder, right as he's about to get into his car. She immediately drops the knife and apologizes and tries to help him. Al runs. Al ends up pumping blood out of his system and loses consciousness on someone's porch and eventually dies from massive blood loss. Debbie is charged, but ends up only getting like 7 years probation in her home state of Georgia. The wound would have only required stitches if he hadn't run. It was a crime of passion, and even the girlfriend testified that she tried to help and was immediately remorseful. So we move in. Now, I was too little to remember much, so this is all my mother's telling. Immediately after we move in, weird stuff starts to happen. My mom was a smoker at the time and made a little corner in the basement where she would smoke cigarettes and read books. Sometimes the light would just click off, so she would just turn it back on at first. After it kept happening, she had CE, or civil engineering, come out and check the wiring. They ended up coming out 3 different times, never finding anything wrong. Eventually, my mom would just ask for Al to turn the light back on, and he would, sometimes. One day, while down there smoking, the light went off, and when my mom asked to turn the light on, Al proceeded to flash SOS in Morse code. That was the last time my mom smoked in the basement. I forgot this bit sometimes. It would feel like someone was caressing her cheek while she was reading. The floor plan of the house was basically cut right in half. Going in, the front door, the kitchen, dining room, and living room were all on the left in that order. About halfway into the house, on the right, was the door to the hallway. That had all the bedrooms and the bathroom at the end of that hallway. My mom spent a lot of nights alone because of my dad's job. After she put us down for the night, she would close the door to the hallway and watch TV. On a pretty regular basis, the door to the hallway would just open while my mom was watching TV. At first, she thought it could be my older sister that was around 4 at the time, but when she'd check, my sister would be soundly asleep. The only major incident that happened was one night it looked like smoke was coming up from behind the TV, and it took the shape of a man's face. When my mom got up to take a closer look at the TV, the smoke immediately dissipated. The next day, she told our neighbor what she saw, and the neighbor freaked out because my mom had just described Al perfectly. One day, my mom was watching some show about the supernatural. On it, they were discussing how when people, especially men, freeze or bleed to death, they don't realize they are dead, because you just lose consciousness and die. They also said that if you are being troubled by such a spirit, that you should address them by their name and remind them that they are dead, then telling them to go to wherever they are resting. From that point on, whenever Al did any of his ghostly stuff, my mom would say, "Al, you're dead. Go back to Georgia." This happened so often it became rote to her. One night, my mom has some friends over to hang out. Al pops the hallway door open. Instinctively, my mom says, "Al, you're dead. Go back to Georgia." And everyone in the room just looks at my mom like she's crazy. She then has to explain the whole thing, and for the rest of the night, escort anyone down the hallway that has to use the bathroom. However, that was the final appearance of Al. He finally realized he had died and found his peace. I hope you use this one. Feel free to use my name. Thanks for reading. Signed, Rebecca. Number 2. Dear Biker, here is my ghost story I was telling you about. I was around 12 years old at this time, so this happened about 10 to 12 years ago. I lived in an old neighborhood, but my house was at the end of the street, and behind my house was woods. Down the street I had a friend, who I would stay the night with. One night we were having a sleepover as usual. It's the middle of the night, and she finally falls asleep on the couch, and I'm lying on the other couch trying to go to bed. I start hearing footsteps up the stairs to get to the living room, and it's a tall black shadow. I lie still and my breathing became heavy and I was terrified. I thought if I move it will know that I saw it. I'm frozen in fear, and as it gets up the steps, I kid you not, it flipped off flip-flops and walked into the kitchen. I start hearing the markers and stuff move on the table, and I think, now is my chance. I began yelling and screaming, trying to shake my friend, telling her what happened. We start yelling for her mom. We end up going to lay with her mom in her bed. I'm laying closest to the wall, and I start hearing footsteps again, and until it gets extremely close to me, then I feel it jump on me. I start freaking out, and her dad runs into the room and says it was just him, walking, making the noise, and nothing happened. Fast forward, I go home and don't see it for a while. I'm scared to sleep alone, so I sleep with my dad, whose bedroom is across the hall. One night, I wake up in the middle of the night. I rise up slowly and look across the hall, and there is a black shadow, just sitting on my bed, staring at me. I start freaking out, and my dad gets mad at me. After that, I had to sneak in my dad's room to sleep with him because I wasn't allowed to anymore. I started shutting his door so I wouldn't see that again. Instead, the lights in the hall would flicker all night, and I would see it under the door crack. The radio in the garage would also randomly turn on. When I was about 18, I moved my bedroom downstairs by our kitchen. At night, the cabinets would just keep shutting, and it terrified me. It's like I couldn't leave the room and was forced to be scared all night. We moved away from my childhood home, and the house I live in now, I don't get that bad feeling. At my childhood home, it always felt off. I still don't understand why I saw the ghost or why I don't see it anymore. Signed, Dana. Number 3. Hey Tattooed Biker, I would like input if possible from either you or your viewers in the comments if this gets used. I am a critical care nurse and have been for 20 plus years. In my 2 decades of experience, I have witnessed inexplicable miracles, as well as some things that I can only describe as unnerving or odd. I am a scientist and a skeptic, but for the life of me, I can't conceive of an explanation for what I'm about to tell you, so bear with me. It was a slow shift, meaning we only had 2 patients in the department that day, and both were on full life support and heavily sedated. The only other person in the department was my coworker, who was sitting a few feet from me at the nurse's station. I was charting and she was typing. This was in the olden days, and it was very quiet that day. We suddenly heard a loud rattle coming from the direction of the crash cart, which was on a central wall. Startled, we both looked up and saw the crash cart get shoved by an invisible force. It was plugged in, and the cord was approximately 6 feet long. The cart traveled as far as the cord allowed and then stopped. After we were done gawking at what we had just observed, we just turned and stared at each other, speechless. I got up to examine the cause, but as far as I could tell, nothing had caused that type of motion. Crash carts can weigh over 100 pounds and are generally not easy to move or maneuver. One more thing. Many of our non-ventilated patients would tell us that they would see children running around the department and sometimes outside the windows. I messaged my coworker years later, and she is still unnerved by what we saw that day. Hospitals are weird places. Dear TB, I have a pretty good one for you. This was a while back, when I and my twin sister were 7 years old. And we're adults now, so bear with me on the details. I've been wanting to tell this experience to people for a long time, but didn't know where to post it or send it until now. So this happened when me and my identical twin were 7 years old and playing t-ball. It was near sundown, and we already ran off far from our mom's line of sight, playing around the oak trees by the park fence, until we heard the voice of a young girl above us. We both looked up and saw this girl, around the same age as us, or maybe a year younger, sitting on a tree branch and just looking down at us. She was wearing an old white dress and had long black hair that reached all the way down her back. Like regular children, we thought nothing of how she dressed and just focused on our new friend to play with. We played with her for about an hour until our mom told us it was time to leave and we said our goodbyes. Until I turned around the last second and asked her, "Hey, why were you in that tree?" And she gave me the most dead and vacant stare that I've ever seen in my life and just said, "I live in this tree." I was so confused on what she meant until my mom yelled, "Girls, let's go." And I faced my mom quickly, about to point out our new friend that we had made, until the young native girl just disappeared. All that was left was a piece of some sort of metal on the ground where she was. And me and my twin sister just booked it to our mom, not wanting to make her wait any longer. As we left, I looked out the car window one more time and saw the young native girl, just sitting in the branches of the tree, facing us with her long black hair flowing in the wind. That's the last time we ever saw her at that park. Thanks for reading. Signed, Debbie. And there it is. All I have for you tonight. I hope you enjoyed hearing these spooky paranormal tales as much as I enjoyed reading them. If you enjoy stuff like this, and you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. It's completely free and it really helps out the channel. So till next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe. I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.